So today we are on our QMS featured episode, and we are joined by Iain Macdonald, the Market Intelligence Manager for QMS. And today we're really going to focus on the newly released Scottish red meat industry profile. So Iain, you were up at Turriff Show this week, and you have an amazing document. I think it's 77 pages long of so much information. Tell us, what is this booklet? What is it?
Yeah, thanks, Kirsten. We launched at the Turf Show on Monday. It The red meat industry profile is that's really what it is. It's just a wide range of statistics from across the sector, from farm gate prices through livestock production numbers, herd size, processing output, and then you've got things like international trade, retail prices, consumer demand, all thrown in as well. So it gives you a good feel of trends over time and where we kind of are, or I guess a state of nation as well for last year.
I think it's a really nice booklet in that there's a lot of text in there, but there's also pictures, which if you're struggling to follow the text or some parts are, you have to almost read it twice to grip it, but the infographics are really good in there. Um, I think this has changed over time, this booklet. How long has it been part of QMS's work, and how has it kind of grown in that time?
Yeah, so I think we're maybe on to about the 22nd or 23rd edition of it. And it's probably followed the same structure the whole time with the sort of basic chapters, but it's definitely evolved. I think when I started working on it 2010, it was much smaller in size, so I've added quite a lot of content to it, and I guess there's always little tweaks based on what the big issues of the day are, and maybe 3-4 years ago, when Abby Tong, who listeners will know from retail updates, she has a good eye for the visual side of things, and I tasked her with improving the visual content. So we had a real increase in the number of graphs and infographics we used, because I think even from myself, I like writing, but you need to really see the trends, because there's so much going on and you can't really put that across with words. Those pictures are really, really important.
It definitely breaks up the text as well, which is always good, I would say. Tell me though, why is it produced? What is the purpose of it?
So yeah, it's really, it's a I guess it's a key reference source for everyone across the sector to use, from I guess from decision makers at a political level and business decision makers, um, I guess internal QMS colleagues and people from across the sector. If you need a quick stat for a presentation, or if you're kind of looking at, I don't know, a business decision, and you're trying to look at all those longer term trends and how things might pan out, it's really useful. So yeah, it's not really a thing to read from cover to cover necessarily, but more if you're looking at for some information on a particular topic, it's a really good place to go as your kind of first port of call.
So it's a large document. If people don't read it from cover to cover, what would be your ultimate one key message you would try and sum the whole thing up to say to people the big thing for this report is?
So I think in 2025, it's probably that record economic contribution, which people find in the sort of infographic at the start and in the introduction, and it's like that figure really highlights the sector's contribution to the Scottish economy. So it covers the impact from farming and from processing, and then all the other allied sectors, all those important supply sectors like auctions, feed companies, haulage, equipment, who you see, basically what you see at the agricultural shows like Tariff. You really see them represented there, and it that adds a good chunk of that overall industry activity, which is important for jobs. And I guess it's really that kind of community impact. You've got people in villages and towns and remote areas right across Scotland contributing to the economy, but also that kind of social rural life aspect as well.
Yeah. And so that would be your one take home. I think we can't talk about the red meat industry without talking about challenges. So I wonder if you could give us your top three challenges that are highlighted in the report.
Yeah, so I guess for 2025, probably the top challenge is more of a 2026 top challenge rather than necessarily in 2025. But those difficult signs of for the pig sector were kind of building towards the end of last year. So yeah, it's really that pig sector is the number one challenge. It's in a difficult place. There were some sort of domestic factors and international factors that were at play that were really building towards the end of last year. And yeah, as we speak now, prices are well below the cost of production, and we've seen a big increase in sow kill this year at Scottish abattoirs. So that signals for a further contraction of the sector. Last year, in the June census, there was already a decline in pig numbers shown, which was a worry. We had import competition. Import prices fell by about 7%, and we know that import consumption is probably more than 40% of overall consumption of pig meat in the UK. So that, uh, while overall import volumes didn't increase, it was that kind of competitive aspect that that hits the pig sector quite hard because so much of consumption is imported. Not really in retail. There's a bit in retail, but it's more other parts of the sector where I guess that country of origin is maybe not the number one criteria, and it's more price sensitive. And I guess that kind of brings us on to that second key challenge is that import competition. We also saw it in the beef sector, where there was a huge change in the makeup of UK imports. Overall volumes were fairly flat, but non-EU beef went from I think under 10% in 2024 to over 20% of imports in 2025, and in the second half of the year that was more like 25 to 30%. And so that's highly competitive, and it's probably the higher end kind of cuts going into food service and wholesale channels, which really kind of displace that domestic product from those parts of the the supply chain, really, which yeah is a real challenge. Just when we saw that 30% rise in consumer prices in last spring, that's when things really changed overnight, really. There's a good chart which highlights that in the report, just that share really jumping over a sort of 2 month period. And on the sheep side, actually, that import competition it's still there, but demand has been so strong that the market's really absorbed those extra imports in 24 and 25. So that I guess that's a bit more of a positive aspect. And the global sheep market has been strong, so those import prices were much higher uh, in comparison to beef and pork, where imports actually, well, certainly from non-EU sources on the beef side, that import price came down. Irish beef was more expensive, with Irish cattle prices going up last year as well. And then the third challenge is obviously one that we've all been talking about in Scotland for a long time. It's those livestock numbers. We saw a further decline in the beef herd last year, which is a concern, and about 10% of the herd is gone since 2021. So that's really quite a sharp number. When you compare 25 with 2015, we've lost 70,000-ish cows from Scotland. So that's quite a big number. When you really see that gone from about 425,000 down to about 355,000, which really is quite a stark number. I guess slightly more positively, we've seen higher productivity offset that, and some of that's from that huge change in the dairy sector, getting much more beef out of the dairy herd, which has offset that suckler beef decline.
So there's a lot of challenges in there. I
Yeah,
think
yeah,
just one thing maybe to highlight is you're talking about 2025 data, and it's probably just I know we're in 2026 and the likes of the pig sector has changed quite a lot, but to be able to have a full data set, you do have to go a year backwards, don't you? So that's why it's 2025 data.
yeah. That's always the challenge, and you quite often some of those challenges, yeah, they'll change from year to year, so it's always a little bit difficult. But you can, when you're looking at things over time, and it does give you a good kind of state of the nation. picture.
Yeah. I like to throw you a few questions, Iain, because I know that your head is like a Bible. And just to test you to see how much you remember of this booklet. But the first challenge you said there was about pig sector, and I know Robert is going to be talking to Sarah in a coming podcast, so we'll probably talk more about the pig sector there. So we'll maybe talk more about the figures today. But I just again, I'm testing you here, Iain. Self-sufficiency of the um, pig, Scottish pig sector. I was quite surprised by the figure in the book. Do you want to talk around that?
Yeah, so yeah, we there's a large outflow of pigs from Scotland to England for I guess for finishing and processing. So abattoir production is, I think we're probably only about 25% self-sufficient in round numbers. But if you look at all the kind of all the number of pigs born in Scotland, then actually you'd be over 100%, which really highlights that outflow.
Yeah, it's a quite
Yeah,
incredible number. Only 25% self-sufficient, and I guess as the breeding herd is reducing quite considerably at the moment, that figure in next year's book could be really quite scary, couldn't it?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Another thing maybe to
Well, actually,
say is
on that, I'd say actually on that 25%, maybe the abattoir production's actually increased in Scotland this year. So I think in next year's edition, then that figure actually might be a little bit higher. But maybe 2 3 years down the line, as we kind of see how things move on from that lower herd, then things might change. But yeah, abattoir production probably is a bit more positive on the pig side. More of those Scottish-born pigs have been slaughtered in Scotland in 2026.
okay. And again, it's quite interesting when you see the graphs, like you were saying that you fairly see towards the end of 2025 the trend was starting to develop, and at the time we probably had no idea it would cause the crisis that it has now. But it's having a look at those graphs. It's yeah, you fairly do start to build a bit of a picture there. You spoke about the cattle and sheep sector there as well. I think it was challenge number 3, and you were talking about the reducing cattle numbers. A few things surprised me when I went through the book. One of them was the amount of holdings in Scotland that have cattle. Again, I found it quite a shocking figure. I'm going to test you again. Do you remember what the figure was? And do you want to kind of explain that?
Yeah, so it's about 20% of holdings in Scotland have cattle. I guess some people might think it's more, um, but there's one of the things is that what is a holding, what is a business? So there's I think just under 50,000 holdings, whereas you might have more like 20,000 businesses, and some buildings will have multiple holdings, and I guess there won't be you. Yes, the percentage of businesses with cattle might actually be higher than the percentage of holdings if they're not on at that point of time when the survey is kind of collected.
And I guess that's where data sets are very hard to get a hold of, and farms are so complex, and to understand what is happening from the data that is requested. So where do you actually get the data to make this book?
Yeah, so there's because it's such a big book, there's a lot of different data sources that we use for livestock numbers. Most of that is from the June or the December census results, which is obviously a really good source. Um, you've also got international trade, so that comes from HMRC. The meat balance sheets in the consumption section, they come from DEFRA, and then we use some of the retail data from Numerator by World Panel by Numerator. Yeah, there's just a wide range other sources. Quite a lot of Scottish government publications. We also survey the abattoir sector as well, and then we use some of the levy data that we collect as well. So yeah, a lot of different sources.
Yes, I can imagine you're quite happy to see the booklet actually out and that you no longer have to crunch the data.
Yeah, it's always actually quite good fun pulling it all together and getting that kind of personal view on the sector and seeing how it's all changed. And then a lot of work goes in, and there's a lot of drafting and redrafting and quite a bit of stress to kind of hit that publication deadline. So yeah, it's always a nice feeling when it's complete and you've actually got that booklet to look at.
Yeah. And going back to the cattle numbers, so the booklet was obviously launched at the famous Tariff Show. And again, just looking at the data, the Northeast is faring very high as the amount of male cattle. It's also faring high, I think it looks the highest for the amount of beef cows. Does beef cows include breeding cows, or is it also including cull cows in there as well?
Yeah, so that's always the challenge of the data. So I think it will include any of those cows that are they've already had a calf. So it might not include um, heifers that are in calf, but it will include ones that have previously had a calf. So as with all statistics, it's always going to be slightly kind of imperfect, but it does give you a good view of things. But it will include those that have a calf on the ground and those that have had a calf and are going to be culled.
And why choose Tariff as a place to announce the book or launch the book?
Yeah, so over time we always used to publish this document at the Royal Highland Show, but there's so many other different news items going on at that time. If we felt like this document was getting lost a little bit in all that wider coverage, so we were looking for an alternative show to publish at, and Tariff is it's a very big show, one of those largest ones outside of the Highlands. So, and it was a few weeks down the line, so that gave us a little extra time as well to produce all the figures. So it just seemed to fit well.
And what is the stat again for how much beef cattle come out of the northeast?
So I think 2025 was about, I think it was 32% of the males over a year old were in the northeast, and I think it was 19% or something of the beef cows were there, and about 13% of overall cows. So that really highlights that really important part of the overall sector that's in the northeast.
Yeah. And for reducing cattle numbers, so northeast is reducing as other places as well. Interesting to see Lothian looks to be decreasing the most.
Yeah, that is interesting. Well, I'm from East Lothian, where there's well from where I've been sitting, there's not many cows down here. There probably weren't that many to start with, and obviously there's quite a lot less now. So it is interesting that that reduction has been so significant because you yeah the land's fairly good down here as well. So I think there'd be a perception that most of the stock will have come away from the hills in recent years, where the ground is more challenging. So it is actually interesting that Lothian has seen that biggest herd decline.
Yeah. I'm always an optimist and I don't like to talk about challenges for a whole podcast. So let's move to positives. Now, give me three positives or opportunities that you can see from this book.
Yeah, so I think I talked about that first big one. That was the record economic contribution of the sector. A lot of that increase to 4.2 billion of output and 1.3 billion of GVA was driven by higher cattle prices and also a bit from sheep prices rising last year. I guess when we're thinking forward to this year, that number will probably be a little bit smaller, maybe a bit below 4 billion because cattle prices have come down, but still it's a big number. And it really highlights that importance of the sector, and it's something that we should all really be positive about. I guess it's vital to the Scottish economy. And another positive was just the sheep sector just had a really strong year. There was a lot of really most of the figures were pointing in the right direction. Increased farm gate prices, retail sales were good. We even saw an increase in sheep numbers and a bit of an increase in the lambing rate. Export sales increased, and they increased as a share of overall UK production as well. So yeah, just a very strong year for the sheep sector. And that third real positive and I guess opportunity is that consumer demand, that underlying demand is still strong. While I guess there's a lot of kind of negativity in the press about the economy. Wages were still running at about 4% year on year, and spending on our proteins was increasing, certainly for beef over 10%, and lamb I think about 7%. So that really shows that demand is there. Higher prices meant that beef consumption volumes were squeezed a bit, but people are certainly willing to spend their hard earned money on beef, which is really a positive signal, I guess. And I think it's that natural protein that people are looking for. There's a lot of talk about ultra processed foods last year. Um, Health is obviously a key driver. So yeah, we've got a really good stories to tell on that demand side.
It's very interesting, the sheep side. Obviously, it was a good year. It looks like gimmer sales and breeding sales are starting very, very strong this year. But over the border in England, they're having a really hard time with droughts, with blue tongue. So it's going to be very interesting actually to watch where that goes this year. But certainly 2025 is definitely a year to remember for sheep sales and such like.
Yeah.
It just
Yeah, I think definitely that really is that a 25 a really strong year for lamb production. And yeah, that point about Scotland and England has always been a bit of divergence in recent years, and our numbers seem to be strengthening, whereas there's been a decline further south.
And I think you've said in a previous podcast with us as well, Iain, that the productivity looks to be higher in Scotland than it is in England as well.
Yeah, that seems to have that's one of those things that seems to have changed in recent years. There's always, yeah, you can always question some of the census results and how accurate they are, 100% accurate they are from year to year, because you're never capturing everyone in the survey. But there certainly has been a trend that we've seen rising productivity in Scotland over the last decade, and it seems to be right across the country, across all of the agriculture regions. So that's a really positive thing.
Yeah. Again, it'd be very interesting to see a couple more years data on that and just follow the trend. So you were obviously at Tariff Show, and you will have spoken to a lot of producers on the day. What was the main kind of talking points people were coming to you with?
Yeah, I think at Tariff there really was quite a lot of positivity. I think about future opportunities on the beef side. So I think that was really good to see. I think we can be quite negative in Scotland, certainly about the beef sector. So that I think that kind of narrative shifting towards opportunity was really positive. I did also hear about challenges, which are always going to be there. Input costs, and then if drought is obviously top of the list. Certainly in eastern Scotland, it's been quite dry this summer, but I think we're still in a much better place than if you were in the south of England, where it is extremely dry. So yeah, and when you look forward, I think with climate change happening quite significantly in Europe, I think Scotland's probably still going to be a relatively good place to produce livestock and that quality product that we've got here. So I think people are really starting to see that as well.
It has been interesting how the lack of water has changed people's management choices as well. Store lambs maybe being sold a bit quicker, other areas not able to buy the number they normally would, and it's it really does make us have to kind of be resilient and really think about the breeding enterprise first and make sure that there is enough grass for next year's crop as well. I just wonder though, Iain, it's been a while since we have recorded a podcast, and beef and sheep trade and marketplace has probably changed quite considerably since the last time we had you on the podcast. So I wonder if you could just give us an update, first of all, beef industry and then sheep industry.
Sure. Yeah. So we are speaking on the 7th of August. So I think the last time I spoke with you, Kirsten, was the start of July. The market had just started to stabilise on the beef side. Over the past month, we've seen those cattle prices increase further. I guess the other interesting point is kind of been a bit softer in Scotland compared to the market south of the border through most of the first half of the year, but that seems to have changed. The Scottish market has shown a stronger upturn over the past month. What's been driving that? I think seasonal supplies. That's going to be one of those factors. Our kill is been towards that kind of lower end of the range for the year so far in recent weeks. So yeah, less cattle going in, and then we're well into the second half of the year now. So people will be looking at I guess consumer demand probably 4 or 5 weeks down the line, given that kind of move from when you kill and then you mature the beef. So you're always thinking a few weeks ahead. So as we move towards autumn, yeah, that kind of volume tends to rise in retail. So I guess that demand side's probably strengthening seasonally too. So I guess that's like a positive sign. Store prices have still been quite strong. They're actually higher than last year. So despite that finished price still being 5-ish% down, our store prices have been higher. So that probably still a bit of a squeeze on the finisher. So that lift in finish prices is definitely positive for, I guess, overall sector confidence, which is good. And moving on to the sheep sector, the lamb price, I think it fell around the turn of the month towards sort of 320 a kilo, and it's now been back above 340 at Scottish auctions. You always see a big, in most years, you see a big drop from new season high down to autumn low. I think if you followed a kind of normal seasonal trend, there's maybe still a bit potential further for prices to dip. But every year is different. Last year, the market was actually quite flat through spring and summer because we had a really big carryover of hogs that were very late onto the market, and they kind of came more after Easter rather than before. So yeah, a little bit of I guess it seems to be a bit of a more normal market pattern this year with that new season high and then kind of summer and autumn low. But I think prices still kind of maybe slightly ahead of last year. So I guess that's a positive signal. We certainly haven't seen that high price point turn consumers off yet. So I guess that's also positive. Demand has been really strong from the home market and exports in recent years.
And I guess again the price largely goes with supply and demand, doesn't it? And as we would normally have these new season lambs in the market now, I just wonder, is the throughput there, or is it the same point as last year, given the lack of water, lack of grass growth, lack of nutrition in front of them? Are you seeing any trends like that?
Um, don't know the exact numbers so far, but I think we're kind of fairly similar in round numbers of new season lambs that have gone through so far. I think in June we were maybe we were running higher, and then July a bit lower. So overall fairly stable, certainly at auction level, which I guess is quite interesting.
Yeah,
So yeah,
and
because it's obviously very. I guess last year it was very dry, kind of late spring, whereas this year it's been drier late summer. So it's a little bit different.
yeah, and the same with store cattle. Obviously, the price of them has jumped quite a lot over the since we last spoke to you anyway. And the confidence in the store producers is quite clear to see at places like Turriff Show and such like. For the finishers, I think they're a bit more cautious, aren't they, with the margin maybe not being known, the fat price. What did you say? It's 5% lower than it was
Yeah,
last year.
yes, but it's in recent weeks it's probably been about that in round numbers 5% down. But then if you look at where we were 2 years ago, we're still 25% higher.
Yeah, and the throughput of the likes of bulls, bull beef and such like, they'll nearly be through the system now, will they? Or
Yeah, you always tend to see that peak July, August, so we're probably about that peak, and maybe numbers of young bulls starting to drop away again. But I think I haven't got I haven't seen exact numbers, but I think from sort of memory and looking at the data, it seems like we had actually had a few more young bulls about this summer, which is interesting. And it might have been just because we had a fairly good calving in 2025.
that's interesting. It'll be interesting to see the actual, because you'll be able to have actual figures through from abattoirs, will you?
Yeah, certainly from the deadweight price reports. Yeah, there's been in recent weeks that kind of young bull share has been quite firm.
That's maybe a point to pick up, and the next time we speak, Ian, if there's a bit more data
Yeah,
forward for that,
yeah,
then
yeah, absolutely.
brilliant. Do you want to talk about pig sector, where that's at?
Yeah, so yeah, pig sector is obviously fairly well documented. It's had a very difficult year. Um, Prices have kind of been fairly stable in the standard pig price since May now, about £1.80 a kilo, which is really, it's quite interesting when you think, yeah, pigs £1.80 a kilo compared to beef above £6, and lambs probably about £8, which really shows a huge difference. And it is interesting that much lower price point, it really hasn't led to a surge in demand, which is also interesting. But yeah, that European price is still really weak, and yeah, when you've got the standard print price more than 40% higher than the European average, yeah, that competition of imported product is really keeping values across the supply chain, holding them down. I think there maybe are some slightly more optimistic. There's a more optimistic picture from the Chinese market, which is about half of global consumption of pork. Their pig herd has started to fall back, and prices have kind of come off their bottom there. So hopefully that helps that kind of global market picture a little bit. But certainly in the short term, it's still not looking great for the pig market.
I think it's really important to highlight that, Ian, the price difference per kilo, because a lot of people know that the the sector is in crisis, but that the actual difference between them is really stark. And you think, what's a pig when it goes to slaughter? It's about 120 kilos, 110 kilos, and they'll kill it. I'm just trying to get to actually what a carcass comes to. So what do they kill out at? Are
Uh,
they about 80%?
yeah, I think it's quite high, and yeah, the carcass weights have been increasing over time. I think when I started in 2010, it would be about you might even be less than 80 kilos, and now you're looking above 90 kilos on average.
So what are you for a carcass? Should be about 160, 170 pounds at the moment.
Yes, probably something around that kind of level.
Yeah, yeah. And then for sows, what would sows be trading at? Culls.
Um, we don't really have good data on that, so we just have to kind of estimate from UK export prices. But yeah, so I think south prices have been down. I'm not sure the exact number on that, but they've been quite weak, and we've also seen a big increase in the sow kill this year, which will have probably impacted that price a bit more as well.
Yeah, yeah. It really is quite amazing when you think from £8 a kilo to what was it, 180 a kilo. It
Yeah,
really does show that clear difference. And like you say, the consumer, if we've got a cost of living crisis, that pig meat should be a meat that the consumer is wanting to buy. It's a very versatile meat. You can go from mince to stir fry. There's so many cheap, quick cook weekly meals that you can do with it as well. So
yeah,
um,
absolutely,
yeah,
and it's very tasty.
yeah. So no, I think, as I say, Robert is going to speak to Sarah in the next podcast, so there'll maybe be a bit more about the pig sector there. But I think it is very important to cover in the market update as well. So Iain, thank you very much. You have covered a huge amount there. Passed my test as well. Every figure I asked you for, you gave me it right. So well done. And like I say, to anybody, it's really worth finding the booklet. Where can they find it, Iain?
Yeah, so it's available on the QMS website, and yeah, there are a few hard copies about, which you might find at places like AgriScot or industry meetings. There might be a copy to pick up there.
And it's a fantastic resource. There's so much there. It really is a red meat Bible, I would say, for 2025. So I would urge everybody to have a look. And like I say, there's words and there's pictures, so it's a very easy to read document. So thank you very much for that, Iain, and we'll hopefully catch up with you in a podcast again soon.
Thank you.